Oh, you mean like delay?
No,
You
no,
mean
like
weight of the bike.
weight of the bike.
Nobody does that anymore.
Nope.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Welcome, welcome. Today we have Hap Seliga. He's the president of SCOTT USA, and a longtime friend of our firm and more recent friend of mine. So Hap, tell us, before we jump into it, tell us a little bit about what you're riding today.
I am riding the SCOTT Addict Gravel 10, which is, fitted mostly with SRAM Force Axis. I have made a couple of customizations on here just to a shorter crank because I'm height challenged.
Hey, and it's that time too,
So I've got a
165.
SRAM Red crank on here, 170 mil. And then because I use this bike both for gravel and for road, I have a set of road wheels that I swap on here, which are the reserve wheels and Grand Prix 5000 tires, but full carbon frame, 3D printed saddle for comfort, good stuff all the way around.
It's not lost on me that you might be rocking a 22 large cassette in the back. What's going on back there? Not a lot of range. that speaks to your power, and I'm a little nervous about it.
I don't know that it's a 22. But if you want to think it is.
I've got a dinner plate.
If it brings
back here,
intimidation factor, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I love the red accents, by the way, on the disc rotors right there. It's a good look.
Indeed, indeed. These were stolen from another bike I had that had a little bit more red.
All right.
So,
hey, good man. How wide of tires can you fit in that puppy?
Very. I think they're 48, maybe 50s.
Okay.
So,
all right, should we get to it?
let's do it.
So Hap Seliga, origin story. The people are dying to know. Where are you from originally?
I grew up outside of Boston,
Okay.
about 30 miles west, small town called Bolton. So about the same square mileage as Boston, but 3,000 people population.
Okay, wow.
So it's really like how I got into riding, actually. Just if I wanted to see my buddies, had to ride and go see them. So BMX in the early days just evolved.
Was that the original bike for you, a little BMX bike?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Constantly taking them apart, horse trading with buddies and trying to upgrade.
How much can you upgrade one of those little BMX bikes, though?
Oh, you can definitely upgrade. I mean, you can spend money on anything, Whatever you want, you can find a way to spend money on it.
Okay, so BMX days in Bolton, Massachusetts. Next phase of life, what are you up to?
So
High school years, you were out there?
I was still in Massachusetts, yep, but I did go off to boarding school for a couple years.
Okay.
Lawrence Academy in Groton, Mass.
Man, tell me about that experience.
That was cool. I was a day student the first couple of years. It was about half hour from my house.
Okay.
But then my junior and senior years, I lived on campus. And it was great. Form that understanding of what independence actually looks like without being too independent.
Man, if I would have been out of the house at 17 in a situation like that, it would have been a disaster.
I think it was
18 was a stretch for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that in many cases. Thankfully, it was a good move for me. Enjoyed that. A lot of freedom there and made my mistakes. But, wasn't too bad in all things considered.
Okay.
So then I went off to school in upstate New York, Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs.
Okay.
And
Different Saratoga Springs.
Then Utah.
Some would say much more glamorous,
Yeah,
although who knows?
if you're into horse racing, for sure. I obviously started as a cyclist on the BMX bike, morphed into road, got pretty fascinated with, the Pro Tour and all of that.
Uh-huh.
Then in,
What age were you getting into road?
gosh, I would say 85. So I was 15 at that point.
Okay.
And did that for a couple of years. Then mountain bikes started, making their way into bike shops. Got my first mountain bike toward the end of 1986.
What was your first mountain bike?
It was a Univega Alpina Ultima
Okay.
And it was like the coolest thing ever. It was mint green and it had 3 spokes on the chainstay, just in case you broke a spoke and needed to change it on the side of the trail.
All right. Okay, so growing up in Boston,
Yeah.
clearly a Yankees fan.
Yeah, you know exactly where I was going. It's like you're indoctrinated into Boston sports. It is just part of the culture. So I had grand ambitions to go work for the Red Sox. And I applied to every team in the United States and got rejected by them all. But I learned about an event called the Baseball Winter Meetings. So baseball winter meetings where all the teams come together in one place and talk about whatever they need to talk about, right? Rule regulations, promotions, hiring, things of that nature. And that year, which rotates each year, was in Louisville, Kentucky. And so I drove down there and worked the hotel lobby, and just anybody that looked like they were a baseball executive, flag them down and try and talk to them.
Whoa.
And managed to land a few interviews and came away with nothing. So I said, screw it, I want to be in the mountains. I'm gonna go for the mountains. And I moved out to Vail, Colorado, and got set up, got a job as a lift operator. I was in training, and someone gave me a message from my mom, because obviously we didn't have mobile phones back then. This is the Stone Ages, Jack. And she said, you know, this team from Arkansas contacted you and they want you to come work. So I went out to the payphone at lunchtime, called the team, and they're like, yeah, you want to come be a stadium operations intern for the summer in Little Rock, Arkansas? We'll give you $600 a month and all the bush beer you can drink. Said, all right,
Done.
I'm there. Like, where is this? Yeah, I had no idea where. I couldn't have put Little Rock on a map to save my life at the time. And you know, I was there with the team for about 10 seasons.
Wow.
Absolutely never thought I'd leave, but as a lifelong cyclist, you know, I continued to ride while I was in Little Rock. In fact, it was my only mode of transportation for a while. Again, and
Coming full circle.
yeah, you know, the minor leagues, you know, it's a very short ladder. So you take on a lot of responsibilities within the team. So my role evolved in just a few years to be the assistant GM and basically running day-to-day operations.
What?
And this included, you know, overseeing, you know, 100 concession workers, stadium operations, public relations, community relations, accounting, you know, so I was kind of like in the deep end, just learning how to do all this stuff.
Competitive Cyclist starts in Arkansas.
Yep, Little Rock, Arkansas. You know, at the time, you know, the cycling scene obviously is massive now in Arkansas, but at the time, it was, you know, very small. You know, we were those guys that rode, you know, as opposed to being like Utah now, where like everybody rides, right? That's why we're all here. But you know, it was like I would go over to the shop at lunchtime from the ballpark, you know, most days, and we'd put a little piece of plywood over the garbage can and have lunch. And sometimes I'd bring concession items or whatever, but inevitably, you know, they were obsessed with the fact that I was in the baseball business, I was obsessed with the fact that they were in the bike business, and that's where our conversation landed every day.
Okay.
And basically, it was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could just focus on the Gucci shit all day, every day, rather than mess around with hybrids? And, at the time, the cycling scene's so small in Little Rock, there's no possible way that you could justify that inventory commitment for such a small population density that was, a target audience.
Uh-huh.
And, this is really the late 90s that this is starting to evolve. And, at that time, obviously you had like the dot-com bubble that was happening. People are getting a little bit more comfortable, functioning online.
Uh-huh.
Still dial-up, if our listeners know what the hell that is. But when you think about how to justify that inventory commitment, it's about talking to a larger audience, right? And reaching more people. And about that time, they managed a division of a strong local bike chain called Chainwheel. Chainwheel was owned by a guy by the name of Tony Karklands, who now owns Time Bicycles.
Okay.
And, he's also he helped build Orbea USA, a couple other things. But strong cycling background. And Brendan, who is one of my best friends and was one of the two guys that I was super close with. Brendan is now the CEO of USA Cycling.
Oh.
And Craig Zedeker, who is my other great friend, who my wife and youngest were just visiting in Bentonville. He was the three of us ultimately came together to join forces and start Competitive. But they first, Brendan especially was really driving the fact that the internet needed to be an area of investment for Chainwheel. At the time, Tony was, fairly resistant to the notion.
Okay.
Very rooted in the IBD, understandably. And they ended up buying out this little tiny satellite location and rebranding it bikeseller.com. So seller like sell, S-E-L-L, not like basement.
Yeah.
But
I feel like that makes it pretty easy to find.
yeah, that was like, you could go to Bike Seller, you couldn't really transact for anything outside of a gift certificate. But all of the models that Bike Seller carried, you could get the story behind. Basically, you could then go to the Bike Seller site and find the content that you experienced in person to tell you about said bicycle. And it was a hit. People really enjoyed it. Still not really reaching the world at that point, but it was kind of a feather in the cap to say this content thing has legs.
Yeah.
Enter our Shimano rep at the time, or their Shimano rep at the time, Chris Watkins. He went on to found Arundel Bicycle, which is a carbon cage company, makes bar tape, all kinds of other stuff. He's doing great. But he came in and said, there's this guy in Texas that is doing business as Competitive Cyclist out of his garage, and he wants to be done. So like, whatever, dimes on the dollar, fire sale, just get me out of this thing. So Brendan and Craig took a loan from Brendan's dad and drove down to Texas, got a U-Haul truck, and drove home, loaded up his garage, and got all the IP, you know, in terms of the name Competitive Cyclist, the 800 number, which still exists today. And he didn't have a website or anything, but small mailing list, mostly triathletes.
Okay.
And
Great name.
a great name, yeah. But the intent wasn't at the time to do anything with the name. It was more about the inventory.
Okay.
And turning that into cash and making some money on the way. So went through the inventory, took the good stuff that they could sell at the front door, and then started listing all the other stuff on eBay. You know, just random campy components and stuff. And they burned through it in no time, paid back the loan in a matter of a couple of months.
Oh, wow.
So all of a sudden they had all this good inventory and this IP. And as our conversations continued, you know, I'm like, what if, you know, ultimately, Competitive Cyclist came to be, launched a prototype site, and built by a local web developer. But all it was custom road bikes. You could customize anything down to the nipple color on your wheels. Quickly tabulate weight and price, and the thesis was simple.
Weight and price.
Yeah, I mean, just like
Nobody does weight. Oh, you mean like delay?
no,
Or you
no,
mean
like
weight of the bike.
weight of the bike.
Nobody does that anymore.
Nope.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You know, quickly took our IBD presence. You know, we had to make that difficult decision because we had some long-standing relationships with Trek, Cannondale, Specialized,
Right.
that we ultimately had to say, hey, you know, we need to move inventory dollar allocations over here because we're doing a lot more business. So those were hard. In 2011, I guess it was probably the end of 2010, Backcountry came knocking on our door. We, you know, had a conversation, came out and visited, did the whole dog and pony show during Sundance that year. Got to see what scale looked like firsthand, you know, with all the automation in their distribution center. It was just mind-boggling to us. And we told them no. And at the time, you know, they were owned by Liberty Media Corporation, which of course had all the money in the world. And we knew they were probably gonna try and make our lives difficult. So we got together with our leadership team, and over the ensuing 4 to 6 weeks, we basically said, all right, how do we make the leap from a $30 million business to a $100 million business? What's it gonna take? And you know, really dove into the 3 big buckets, you know, inventory, systems, space, I guess 4 big buckets, and people.
Okay.
You know, and we came away with a great realization and understanding that it was fraught with risk because we were fully bootstrapped at the time.
Hello.
You know, literally our house is on the line with everything. And as luck would have it, Backcountry came calling again. They had upped their offer to a point where we could negotiate and consummated a deal. So August 19th of 2011, we announced to our team what was happening. And less than 2 months later, we made the move, the entire business, to Utah.
Wow.
Which was possibly the most difficult weekend of my life. July 1st, 2015, Backcountry sells to TSG Consumer Partners. And, you know, at that time, understandably, TSG says, all right, anything that is not contractually adhered to, we want to like pause, just so we can kind of take inventory and have some say in the investments, the strategic investments going forward. And, you know, so basically my boss at the time, who was the CEO, Jonathan Nielsen, says to me, you know, hey, don't really have much for you to do, because we're literally on the final stages of signing leases for physical retail.
Oh,
And like, we can't do that now for a bit, you know, while they go through this process. So he says, you know, go ride your bike and keep your other stuff afloat, and you know, we'll circle back when the time is there. So, you know, I jokingly call it the summer of Hap, 2015, and I logged.
it's actually the origin of the word happy.
Yeah, no, right? I mean, it's exactly right. But I logged nearly 3,000 dirt miles that summer.
Oh my word.
And I'd like, you know, commute from my house up to the top of the crest, across the crest, down to Kimball Junction. Might do it on the way home or go through Round Valley or whatever, but it was just absurd. And that was fun for a while. But at the same time, you know, you come in, you see your coworkers, and you don't feel so good about that. And not to mention, just the way I'm wired, it's like I need something to wrap my head around all the time. Like I need gnarly problems to solve. And it became pretty evident that there was no quick resolution to this, you know, this issue. And I was just like, all right, it's time to go. The entrepreneurial fire was burning anyways. It was time to go. And I left with nothing, but I also knew that I wasn't going, like, when I'm doing something, I'm 110% in, you know? And I knew that I wasn't gonna figure out what the next thing was until I had exited. I got recruited to join Sigma Sports United, which had the Nuke-Proof and Vitus brands, and I established their, we ended up establishing their North American operations here in Utah. And sadly, that turned into what will undoubtedly be a Netflix documentary. You know, it's a publicly traded company, but the majority owner defaulted on a 150 million euro note, and we were on the front page of the Wall Street Journal after that happened, and the whole thing came tumbling. Chain reaction. Wiggle, the largest bike retailer in the world, sold for 1% of what they had bought it for a year and a half prior.
Wow.
1%. And it was very, very bitter pill, because we were, you know, overachieving our targets here in the United States, and you know, doing great. Best team I've ever worked with. It was just incredible how quickly we mobilized. We went February of that year, it was just me, built the team, and the team launched 2 direct sites by November, shipping bikes all over North America. And it was just an incredible ride that came to a very bitter end. But one of the people that had reached out to me on the heels of the SSU demise was a guy by the name of Steve Meineke. Meineke is a legend. You know, he's been the president of various outdoor companies, you know, Solomon, Keen, Specialized, Raleigh, North America, Excel Group, you name it. And just so much experience to draw from. And, you know, it's flattering to even be considered. Basically, Young One, who is the parent company now for SCOTT, they are the majority owner by a little bit. They wanted to establish leadership in the US for SCOTT, and Young One is a 50-year-old Korean publicly held company.
Huh.
And they are a textile manufacturer. So you're probably thinking to yourself, how did they come to own SCOTT? You know, and they probably were thinking the same thing. But you know, what I can say about Young One is they're absolutely impressive group of people, an impressive company, and they are so morally grounded. They have a very long-term view on every relationship, to the point that that's how they ultimately came to own SCOTT. The former CEO, got into financial trouble a couple of times, and as a partner to him, they said, "We'll help you out." And they did, and they took a small equity share, another small equity share, and finally, had a majority interest after the third time. Ultimately, it was time for a leadership change up at the top, and they made that change. And on the heels of that, they brought in Steve as an advisor, Steve Meineke, as an advisor to the company to basically help them navigate the path, and lean on his experience to understand the bike industry and all of its quirks. And Steve and I, started the interview process. I don't know who else he was interviewing or whatever, but ultimately, late May of that year, I was offered the job, and I started 2 days later. And
and here we are.
Here we are 14 months later, so making great progress.
All right, that's a wrap on Hap Seliga. 14 months now. 14 months president of SCOTT.
It's been a great 14 months for sure. The team has really come together. We've made a lot of progress, and really excited about the next couple of years. Obviously, we got a lot of uncertainty in the world that we're navigating right now, but that's the same as everybody. So, great products, great people, great ownership structure, great support from guys like Steve Meineke and Dave Stevens. It's just so much to be thankful for.
Well, Hap, congrats on all of this. It's been exciting to hear everything you've been up to, and we appreciate your time today. We'll check in again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jack.